Hi and welcome to the channel. Now, if you drive a car in the UK, there's one thing that will strike fear into you at least once a year, and that's the MOT test. Now, I thought it'd be a bit of fun for us to have a look back and see where it came from and how it's developed. Now, if we cast ourselves back to the 1950s, there was still an awful lot of pre-war cars on the road, but automotive development had really come on a lot since the Second World War. Things like, we had motorways coming along in 1959, and, cars like the Morris Minor were much more modern. So it was time to tidy up those old cars on the road. So the Road Transport Act of 1956, that brought in the parameters for the MOT test. Now, that was introduced in 1960, and initially it was actually voluntary, and it was aimed at cars over 10 years old. And we've got some great archive footage here of someone taking their car in for a test. As you can see, they drive it in, they check the aim of the headlamps, they go underneath and check the steering under the car, give everything a good wiggle. They then take it out into the car park and do a quick brake test on it. And that was basically it. That test cost you 14 shillings, or in modern terms, 70 pence. And actually, if you passed, you had to pay another shilling or another 5 pence for your test certificate, which I find absolutely incredible. And it was just a little hand-completed form like this one. So initially, this was only aimed at cars over 10 years old. And it had such an effect, it absolutely decimated that age of car. Within a year, in December 61, they reduced it to 7-year-old vehicles. So it was really sort of bringing down the age of vehicles and increasing safety on the road. Now, initially, as I said, it was voluntary, but in 1962, you then had to have an MOT certificate to be able to obtain a tax disc, which you had to display in the window of your car. So it forced everyone's hand to actually put their cars in for MOT. Now, as the 60s went on, in 1967, they then reduced it to 3-year-old cars. And that's the rules we've still got today, that if you buy a brand new car at 3 years, you have to put it in for MOT. Now, the elements they checked, they changed first time in 1968, where they introduced a tyre check, which to me sounds incredible, that you could have turned up with probably 4 ball tyres and still passed the test. They then updated it again in 1977, and here's a list of the items that they added into the test, and most people of that era will be familiar that a lot of these items are still included. Now, at this point, the test certificates had actually changed. They were a much more complicated design to copy, and back in those days, MOT test certificates were quite a black market item, because there was no sort of real easy way of checking whether they were fraudulent or not. And as you can see, they've just got a rubber stamp on them from the garage that's passed it. As we went into the 1980s, this authentication system improved, and all garages you would find have one of these embossing tools to imprint their details into the MOT certificate. So that helps you sort of know it was a valid certificate, unless, of course, one of those has been stolen, and I wouldn't know about such things, of course. The next big change came in 1991, when suddenly emissions came into the MOT test, and that had quite a cull of old cars as well, because that's not something anyone had worried about before. And of course, this is coming in around about the time of catalytic converters on the new cars, so obviously emissions were becoming a big thing. And around this time as well, the certificates have been updated again, so they now include the colour of the car and also the chassis number. Now, I can't possibly reveal details, but this may, of course, been related to the fact that if someone had got a car that they knew would pass, they put on a set of number plates from another similar vehicle and put it through the test. I believe those kind of things may have happened. And then the next big change came in 2005, and this is where everything moved online, and the ability came along for you to check MOT history on cars, going back nearly, 18 years now, which we haven't had in the past. And the other thing it meant was that roadside enforcement and digital enforcement was a lot easier for the police and other authorities. So where are we at today with MOT tests? Well, in the UK, would you believe there's around 23,000 MOT testing stations. And each year for cars and motorcycles, they carry out about 32.5 million tests. And the cost today is a little bit more than 70 pence. It's now £55. I really hope you've enjoyed that, and that's given you a little bit of background as to where the MOT test has come from and how it's developed. And if you've enjoyed it, please do a great thing and just click that subscribe button for us.